Today, what we're addressing is that question of how should you actually balance demand creation versus demand capture when you're allocating budget and resources? We know that every business has limited time and resources to meet the current demands of today and the future demands of tomorrow. So, as a marketer, you need to strike the right balance between creating that future demand and capturing that existing demand.
Welcome to the B2B Playbook. We built this channel for small B2B marketing teams who want to drive more revenue for their business. Every week, we're showing you how to create more demand for your brand step by step using our 5Bs framework. So if you're time poor, resource strapped, but you still want to make a big impact on your business, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below so you don't miss an episode. Welcome back to the B2B Playbook. Today we're discussing how to balance demand creation and capture budget when you're resourcing. We are into season 6 of the show, and we spent seasons 1 to 5 giving away our 5Bs framework for creating and capturing demand. We showed you how to do it step by step. Kevin, excited to dive in today because it's a question that so many people always ask us all the time, is how to allocate our resources between demand creation, demand capture. What should we do and when? But before we dive into that, can you please tell us what each of the 5Bs in our 5Bs framework are that people can catch up on if they go back through seasons 1 to 5?
And listeners, you can catch up with those episodes if you go right back to the beginning of the podcast and listen to the first 20 or so episodes where we really cover off on what those 5Bs mean. And then you can dive into the detail as well in that backlog of episodes. But very quickly, the 5Bs are be ready, be helpful, be seen, be better, and be the best. Be ready starts off with talking about how to deeply understand your dream customers and those that influence those dream customers, the Dream 100. Then we move on to be helpful, where we talk about developing relationships of trust with them, particularly online with the content that you produce, and that's helpful content. And then we move on to be seen. We look at how to amplify the helpful content that you're putting out there and how to get that focus in to getting the right content in front of the right people. And then we move on to looking at Be Better, which is all about optimizing your B2B marketing process to get the most out of your processes that you've set in place in the first 3 Bs. And finally, in Be the Best, we look at some of the advanced strategies and tactics that the guys at the bigger end of town might use and how to bring them into your own practices as well. And in that season, we also look at how does this whole framework actually look like in practice when you get to the end. Do you circle back through, and how do you apply it again and again to get value again and again?
Very good. Thank you. And please go back and listen to those if you haven't already. And if you've just joined us, welcome aboard. There's plenty of value in those first 5 seasons. This season, in season 6, we're in the middle of our mini series on demand generation, where Kevin and I are answering all the frequently asked questions we get around demand generation. And today, again, what we're addressing is that question of how should you actually balance demand creation versus demand capture when you're allocating budget and resources. The context around this, Kevin and listeners, is we always say that the best time to invest in demand creation was probably 6 to 12 months ago, but the second best time is today. But we know that every business has limited time and resources to meet the current demands of today and the future demands of tomorrow. So as a marketer, you need to strike the right balance between creating that future demand and capturing that existing demand. So how you actually go about allocating that budget and resources to the two, I think really depends on 2 key factors, Kevin. The first one is how mature is your company? How advanced is it? What life stage is it in? And the second is, what is your category positioning? How have you chosen to position your business in the mind of the customer relative to your competitors? So we're going to deal with those 2 things today. First, we're going to kick off with a super quick recap of what demand generation is. And then we're going to go and have a look at how you should allocate the demand creation and capture resources depending on, again, the maturity of the company. And then we'll look at how to do it depending on your category positioning. Okay, we're going to quickly jump into our definition of demand generation because it's important we're on the same page of that to set the rest of this episode up. Demand generation is effectively a go-to-market strategy that builds an intense desire in your dream customer to purchase from you. It's important to remember that only 3 to 5% of your buyers are in market at any time, and you will run out of customers if you only focus on those buyers, which is why it's so hard for organizations to scale. Demand generation, demand creation really helps build relationships with 97% or 95% of the market that's unaware or problem aware. then when they're ready to buy, they're led to the logical conclusion that you're the best solution for them. So jumping back to our whiteboard, and for those listening, please check us out on YouTube. We've really got whiteboard sessions to complement every episode that we do now. Really helps paint a much clearer picture and hopefully explains the concepts a little easier. But demand capture, looking at our later stages of awareness, that's more people that are product aware, most aware, probably some that are solution aware. So they're people that are actively searching for and looking for the answer to a problem that they might have right now. So, for example, if I was a company and we had a sales team as our main go to market function, I might be looking for a CRM and I might be looking for a CRM suitable for sales teams. And if I were Pipedrive, who does exactly that, I'd be bidding on those search terms in Google Ads and G2. And these people would be solution aware, product aware, and most aware. Creating demand is really much earlier in these stages. It's people who are unaware, problem aware, and probably early solution aware. And our goal is to really first make them prioritize the problem it is that you solve, and then also lead them to the logical conclusion that you are the perfect business to help them solve that problem. Okay, so the first factor we want to look at when deciding how much of your budget you should allocate to creating demand versus how much you should allocate to capturing demand is how mature is your company? How far along is it? Now, earlier stage companies, Kevin, I think that they should probably start out by dedicating most of their resources to demand capture. The reason that is look, they need business right now. And most early stage businesses, they should be prepared to work pretty hard to get it as well. And what we see typically firmographically is companies that are around that 20 employee size is where normally companies are really working hard on capturing that demand. That's allowed them enough money to hire, to get up to that point, to put money back into the business and continue to drive growth. They're spending most of their money in platforms like Google Ads, review software like G2, really targeting, again, those people that are high intent and ready to buy right now. That's fine. I think that's where they should spend it right now. So people start off servicing those long tail, high intent searches. So, Kevin, I always love giving the example of CRMs because they're just such a popular search term. Everyone knows what they are. Let's say, for example, you're marketing a CRM and your CRM is really built for real estate agents. Let's say that you've niched down initially by creating a CRM that is perfect for real estate agents that are selling luxury homes. So, of this total addressable market of CRMs that are suitable for real estate agents, you're just carving off a small slice of the pie for agents that are selling luxury homes. Ideally, there isn't a huge amount of competition out there and you can start capturing this demand. So there are people hopefully out there searching for CRMs for real estate agents that sell luxury homes, and you can target that on Google Ads. You can target those high intent searches on review sites as well. But what happens is as you try to scale beyond that and you've maybe tapped out of this market that is real estate agents selling luxury homes, and we want to move to a bigger market, which is a CRM for all real estate agents, so we're no longer quite as niche, we're actually facing a lot more competition because not everyone has niched down as far as you have. And now we're entering a much wider and larger category. So what we need to do is we need to build trust with our dream customers. We need to get them to know and trust us before they're ready to buy. And that means you need to start investing more in demand creation.
And listeners and viewers, when you hit this point where you need to start investing into demand creation, we think a really good way to start off is by allocating still 80% of your budget and resources to that demand capture activity that you're already doing, but carve out about 20% to start investing into demand creation. Why 20% to demand creation? That starts to unlock that next segment of market that you're going to target down the track. It's not going to be immediate. It's not going to be tomorrow when you started your demand creation today, but it is something that's going to build trust with that audience, that other part of the pie. In George's example, the rest of the real estate CRM market who isn't part of those agents selling luxury homes. You need to start creating that demand, that trust with that big chunk of the market that isn't being serviced right now by you. And you need to build that trust, get them to get to know you and your brand, and then to trust you over time. And carving out that 20% will mean that you're not going all in on demand creation from day one. You get to slowly transition over to demand creation and to get to that better balance over time. But if you invest too little, you're not going to have the traction that you need to really have that impact, to really start to build that trust with them fast enough so that your demand creation won't run out and won't start hitting diminishing returns too much before that demand creation effort starts to pay off. Now, later stage companies where there's 20 plus people in the business should invest more into creating demand. Presumably at this stage, they've grown to a certain size because they're able to capture a lot of the demand out there in their specific niche that they're really dominating. And now they're tapping out of that 5% who are ready to buy right now for their particular niche. And they need to start building trust for future buyers. So those buyers come to them when they're ready to buy, when they're in market. And if those later stage bigger companies are too late in doing this, then by the time they need the market to trust them so that they can keep growing, so they can get those customers purchasing from them, then it's too late to start that demand creation process. As we said before, there's a crazy stat out there where if people aren't aware of your brand in the research stage, if they're not already aware of your brand and trust your brand, by the time they come to making that purchasing decision, something like 80% of people won't buy from you. Just because they haven't heard of you before, they'll go with a competitor because they know and trust that brand already. So hopefully we're trying to flip that around so that you've done your demand creation upfront. If you're starting to become those later stage businesses with 20 plus headcount, you've already started your demand creation journey so that when you need to keep scaling, when you need to keep growing your revenue from these demand capture channels, you can do that because you've done the demand creation work to get that demand going into those demand capture channels.
It's like a dial, isn't it, Kevin? And over time, we want to have that dial probably looking more towards the demand capture side where most of our resources are there. And then slowly over time, as that company grows and you have more resources to invest back in, we're shifting it towards demand creation. And yes, like at the point where your company reaches 20 employees roughly, it can really vary depending on industry and the type of go-to-market motion you have and all that kind of stuff. But generally, that's when you can start investing more and more into demand creation. We are firm believers, and we'll get to this later, but we're firm believers that there should never be 0% allocated to demand creation. But we are also very understanding of the realities that most of your time, energy, and budget needs to go in just doing what you can now to survive and get to that next stage of growth.
Yeah, what we're effectively saying, marketers, is that your CPLs and CPAs will get out of control at some point or another if you only focus on demand capture. And that's going to be a lot more stressful for you than it is currently just maintaining those demand capture channels. We want you to avoid that next level of stress. We want you to get ahead of that, to start building that demand creation process so that by the time you get to the point where CPLs and CPAs are starting to creep up, you have already done the demand creation work, and that's bringing those metrics back down. It's bringing the demand into your demand capture channel so that you never really hit that point of diminishing returns for too long before you can come back and rely on the demand that you've been building with your demand generation.
And marketers, Kevin and I have been there before where we haven't created demand early enough and we've just focused on capturing demand. And it is a very stressful, anxiety inducing scenario. And we want you to avoid it as much as possible. Chances are many of you have felt that pain before, and this is why you're feeling it. And we're trying to give you the remedy to deal with it as early as possible. If you need to convince others around you that demand creation, investing in demand creation is a good idea, make sure you check out one of our previous episodes, which is around building a business case for demand generation. It has all the information, calculators, and templates you need to get buy-in from leadership on why you should do this as a pilot program. And as part of it, and we'll link this in the article that goes along with every episode, we have a demand capture forecast template. So if you are investing quite a lot in capturing demand in Google Ads and other high intent channels, and you feel like that things are starting to get out of control, or you feel like you're starting to hit your limit for what you can do on that channel in a profitable manner, go and grab our template. It'll tell you effectively if things are getting out of control and forecasting what that situation might look like for your cost per lead, your cost per acquisition in the next 3 to 6 months. So make sure you check out the B2B Playbook.com, get the article that goes along with this episode and download those templates.
All right, listeners. So that is how to allocate demand generation resources based on company maturity. Remember that mark around 20 employees is a very significant turning point, and you should start to turn your head towards demand capture at that point, at least, if not a little earlier. The second factor to how to allocate your resources between demand creation and demand capture is your category positioning. So, what's your strategy? What's your positioning within your particular market? That will certainly have a big impact on how you allocate your resources against demand capture and demand creation.
Kev, I just want to start this off by saying that really there's probably three main ways that you can position your business. We call them the big fish, small pond method, the head-to-head method, and the new category method. Just very quickly, the big fish, small pond, that's really where you're aiming to try and dominate a piece of an existing market category. You don't want to take over the overall market leaders directly, but you want to really win in a well-defined segment of that market. It's exactly what Pipedrive again did in the CRM market. They said, hey, we are a CRM for salespeople. They're not trying to be a CRM for everyone. They're saying we're just going to be a CRM for a slice of the market that is underserviced, and that is salespeople. The second category positioning is head-to-head, and that's where you're aiming to be the leader in an already well-defined market category that exists in the mind of the customers. If there's an established leader, your goal is to beat them at their own game by convincing customers that you're the best at delivering the solution. Using the CRM example again, it would be like trying to take on Salesforce and saying, hey, we can do everything that Salesforce does and we do it better with better outcomes. Very challenging thing to do because that other company has a huge head start and they have very deep pockets. So that is a difficult place to be. The third category positioning is new market category. And that's where you want to prove to customers that there's a new market category and it deserves to exist. Then you really want to talk about what are the parameters of that market in the minds of the customer, and then to show that you're the leader within it. This is a really challenging one. This is what we would say Uber probably did when they basically had to convince everyone that ride sharing was the way to go when it came to getting from point A to point B. They had to do a ton of education around its safety, how it works, why it was a better value proposition than just catching a regular taxi, and God knows how much money they needed to make that happen. So much more difficult method of positioning. Now, just going at how we can allocate budget depending on which of those you have chosen, Kevin. When it comes to big fish, small pond, Kevin, hopefully there's a decent amount of demand out there to capture currently. So if, for example, you were Pipedrive and you identified that there was this whole bunch of salespeople out there or teams that were sales-led that were using CRMs that were built for marketers or built for marketing operations or revenue operations, and they were sick of it. And hopefully they've been searching for alternatives like CRMs for salespeople. If they're doing that, then there's demand out there to capture right now. And that's really where you should allocate your budget straight away. So the bigger the problem, normally the more demand there is to capture originally. And once you start to exhaust that, then you need to start putting money into creating demand into those people who maybe aren't feeling the pain or aware of the pain quite as much as they should. So you've got the people who are like hardcore, I'm a salesperson, I hate working out of HubSpot. This is not set up for me. Then you've got the other people who also don't really like HubSpot, but it isn't so painful that they're not actively searching for a solution like it. Your job is to create demand amongst them, to show them that it's a problem really worth addressing, to twist the knife as much as possible, to show them what they're missing out on and how much better their life could be if there were a CRM that was built for them. And that's effectively what you're doing when you're creating demand. You're showing them it's a problem worth solving, and then you're going to show them that you're the perfect person to do it. So again, allocate as many resources as you can to capturing that demand, but leave some because you're going to run out of demand to capture. And then you're going to have to start creating it with those who are unaware, problem aware, and early solution aware.
And listeners, with this big fish, small pond positioning, it's a good one to do that transitioning process from pure demand capture to a balance of demand capture and demand generation. Because realistically, you will be putting most of your efforts into capturing demand that's already out there, as George said, and then you're allocating your leftover budget to target the market who can still use your primary solution for that same purpose, but it's just people who would also get the same benefit from it, but aren't as solution aware as those who are immediately already in market and really feeling the pain. You can do that content out there to twist the knife to make them aware that there is actually an issue here. They are a salesperson who is struggling with the same issues as someone who is maybe a little down the track from them, who's using a HubSpot and has gotten sick of using a HubSpot for their processes. So they've switched to Pipedrive. You're tapping into the group of people who are still on HubSpot maybe a year or two earlier in their journey and haven't felt all the same pain points yet. You're trying to bring that forward to make sure that you're putting Pipedrive in front of them as a potential solution for a problem that they're already suffering from but aren't aware yet. So a great one to transition away from that pure demand capture phase and into doing some of that demand generation, because it's a very easy setup to transition into that next group. Now, when you're looking at head-to-head, the story is a little different. As George mentioned earlier, you're aiming to be a leader in a well-defined market category that already exists in the mind of customers. There's probably already an established leader, and your goal here is to beat them at their own game by convincing customers that you're the best at delivering that solution. You're better than the leader that's already in market. That's fine if there is a leader in market. The way that customers make decisions on what to buy in your market is working out what your advantage is versus that other competitor in market. This is really a good choice for small businesses just starting out, because there's that established player in market who's probably already got the market locked down. So it's like entering the market by trying to out Coca-Cola Coke. So if you're bringing out a new soft drink in that same vein, it's going to be a hard struggle, even if it's just Coke in the market. We obviously know there's other competitors in the market. So it's very difficult for a small business to do that head-to-head action, because you don't have generally a lot of resources as a small business. And the advantage is definitely with the likes of Coke in that market, because they have so much resources to beat out smaller players trying to enter the market who already have the attention of customers, who understand that category and who are very loyal to the existing brands. So even though there's probably a fair amount of demand out there to capture, what you're trying to do is to convince those people in market that you're the provider of the best solution in market. That's going to be very difficult to do. So you can still dedicate budget to capture that demand out there to get the ball rolling, but it'll be a much better play to dedicate your budget, in fact, more of your budget, to the demand creation side to build up the brand, probably more around those early stages of brand awareness and awareness content, so that you can show how great you are as a brand and the better outcomes that can be achieved with you.
And also, Kev, the later stage of awareness content is really good here too. So showing case studies as well, showing the amazing outcomes that have been achieved by your organization compared to the primary company that you've gone head to head with, can go a long way to convincing people that you are the right fit for them as well. So when we go and scale to that next market, they are much more brand aware of you, as Kevin has said. And we're leading them again to that logical conclusion that you're the best company to solve for the problem that they have versus the incumbent. Okay, Kev. And the last one is, if you're creating a new category, that's how you've positioned yourself. Basically, you're telling the customer that, hey, we don't have any competitors, nothing out there like this exists. This is a totally new way of doing things. Rarely do we recommend that this is a positioning strategy that a company should take, simply because it takes so much work, meaning time, budget, resources, to convince people that this is even a problem that is worth dealing with in the first place. You have to show that the status quo has a lot of faults with it, and really there's a whole new evolved way of doing things that you need to show people is really worth doing.
As George said, this one isn't easy. You'll unfortunately need to do a lot of the heavy lifting and building the industry or the marketplace that you want to dominate, because doing so is the only way you can really establish that demand in the market. You need to be large enough and powerful enough in your approach to market to then generate that demand so that you have something to capture when it comes to the attention of customers, media analysts, whoever might be influencing your particular marketplace, to make a case for why that new market category should exist and deserves to exist. In this circumstance, there is actually no demand to capture, so you have to create it first. So that means the majority of your market, if not all of it, will first be dedicated towards demand creation. In fact, something like 80% to demand creation over the lifetime of that initial phase where you're trying to establish that category is most likely. Eventually, with all these different category positionings, you want to strike a balance. You want to get to a point where you're looking at 70-30 or 80-20 split between creation and demand capture, because if you're doing the heavy lifting where it's cheaper in the creation stage, then your demand capture channels can be very efficient and you don't have to spend a lot there. And that's what we hope you transition to, because that will be something that's a lot more sustainable long term for your marketing efforts, for your go-to-market strategy, and for all our marketers' sanities as well, because we're not constantly chasing diminishing returns on channels that keep having those CPLs and CPAs go up.
And just a reminder, marketers, that you don't need to go from 0 to 100 overnight when it comes to creating demand. I know it can seem intimidating, but we promise that there's an easy plan that you can put in place for your business. There's a set process to do that. We give you that framework. We give you the strategy, the templates, and the tools to go ahead and execute it. And what we say is you should go through that process, document it, and then you make sure that whatever activity it is that you're doing, and you're all doing activities, that it's driving towards that bigger piece of creating demand and capturing demand. And having that documented holds you accountable. It means you can outsource it to freelancers. It means that you can insource it when you hire. And it's going to make your life so much easier 6 months down the road when you've created all this demand and your boss and leadership are asking you to scale into new segments. So get ahead of it. We show you how to do this in our 12-week program called the B2B Incubator. Make sure you check that out at the b2bincubator.com, or we have plenty of free resources as well, or as always on the b2bplaybook.com to help you if you're not ready for that. All right, beautiful, Kevin. What are the key takeaways from today?
Well, listeners and viewers, first, how you allocate budget to demand creation versus demand capture really depends on, first, the maturity of the business you're in and your category positioning. Generally, most businesses should start by dedicating about 80% of their budget towards demand capture and 20% towards demand creation. As the business scales, you should flip this to 70 to 80% creation and 20 to 30% demand capture instead. And when you're in that early stage and dedicating a small amount of the budget and time to demand creation, it's very important to create and document the strategy so you can consistently execute it over time and you keep scaling up what works and not let it fall away.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, listeners and viewers, as always, you can find links to everything we discussed in the show notes, including that business case template, that marketing ROI template that we spoke about. So make sure you check that out in the show notes. Kevin and I are just so grateful that every week more and more marketers are tuning in every Monday to the B2B Playbook podcast. If you could ask one thing, it would be to please pass the show on to someone who you think would get value from it. Also, check us out on YouTube. There's plenty of fun drawings to accompany every episode from now on. Thank you so much, listeners. Thank you, Kevin. Take care and catch you next week.
Thank you, George. Thank you, listeners and viewers. Catch you all next week.